Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Awakening with the Girls.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Awakening with the Girls. Super excited for today's episode. I have a good friend with me that is super spiritual and into a lot of amazing things. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself and some of what makes you you?
I'm Marjorie Lacovic, and I'm I'm a Reiki healer and into crystals, card readings, doing workshops, goddess workshops, empowering women, yoga, meditation, all the good stuff. So, probably the last decade been really growing with all that stuff coming in.
I love it. So in this podcast, what I like to do is just kind of create a safe space for everyone to realize that we're in this kind of awakening experience together. And I know for me, when I started what I call my awakening, it was very scary, kind of like a roller coaster, a lot of emotions, a lot of feelings, connections, synchronicities, messages. I'm kind of curious what awakening was for you. What does that mean? And was there like a time that you really felt like, okay, I'm waking up to something different?
Yeah, for me, probably about a decade ago, it really got stronger, but I've always been very spiritual. I grew up Catholic, but I always felt like open to other spirituality. And I got into yoga probably like 25 years ago. So that started kind of like more of a awakening in that kind of area. But I'd say it was about a decade ago. I was going through a mental health crisis that year. And I was also doing it really opening, awakening very strong that year. So it was kind of this mix of all this stuff and learning that my spiritual growth could really help me with the mental challenges that I was going through. So I just opened to a whole different level, I'd say, of spirituality. Started in a meditation group, and that really helped me grow with a group of people and a leader that was very psychic, very intuitive, and a healer that really helped us as we were in the group. So that opened me up more and more and more to my psychic abilities.
I love that. Let's dive into psychic abilities. So, everybody's abilities are a little different, and I'm finding that more and more we just experience it differently, just like we experience our regular senses differently. Like taste, to some people, they taste something super spicy, and to other people, it's very mild, and things like that. So, what has your psychic connection kind of been like, or what does that mean for you?
Yeah, for me, it's very visual. I'd say clairvoyance, but for me, it's through my third eye, and I'd say probably claircognizance. So it's kind of like when I close my eyes, it's very strong. I get through my third eye, and I channel. That's gotten stronger. I'd say the last probably 3-4 years, where within the last year, I really owned that I'm psychic, And I always thought, I think back in the day, that it was like people who told fortunes and like predicted the future and like more like, your typical stereotype of like a psychic. So I never really wanted to own that, I think. So I guess the intuitive is like the buzzword now, right?
Yeah,
So
it's a
people
pretty
started saying I was intuitive because I could channel and feel things for people. And I get visions often. To me, they're almost like a waking dream is how I'd best describe it, where you get information, kind of like a download, and I'll see like angelic or spiritual beings. Like I've been to yoga meditations where I'll see angels opening up in the ceiling and kind of flowing down, and people's spirit guides. It's more like a shadow image, like more like a dream, but it's all through my third eye for me.
I love that. I am so grateful that other people have started adopting the term download as well, because I used to kind of explain it to that extent as well. Like in the new the younger generation doesn't know how long it used to take us to get things downloaded either. So
Right.
sometimes when I think of downloads, I'm like, oh, sometimes you can get an intuitive message and it doesn't make sense for weeks, months, maybe years, because back in like the 90s we would download a song and sometimes it would take that long, and then you'd get a crappy version of the song and you're still like, I don't get it. So that's kind of how I feel about some of my downloads. Sometimes they're like instant and they're right there and they're accessible and they make sense, and then sometimes it's very cryptic. It takes a while to get the full frequency and vibration in. So I love that.
I think they're unique for everyone too, and the more you hone into your psychic and intuitive and spiritual side, they get stronger. Like I had an Akashic reading, that was really cool. I never had one. This was like last year, and I had questions of things I had intuited about my whole past lives and what my soul was and my soul birth. And so I asked her how often I got downloads, and she said every 15 minutes, and I'm like, what? So
because
it's happening while we're not even aware of it, you know.
You're a very open channel, and some of us we are receiving them completely, and then there's some energies and souls that they've asked to be more closed off, or they've put up boundaries, so that it makes it harder for them to kind of flip that switch. And there are some people that their senses are just very muted in different experience. So it is very, very different for everybody, and I just love getting the different perspectives on it. Something else I like getting perspectives on is the Akashic. So I talk about the Akashic all the time, and honestly the way I explain it changes very frequently, because in more recent times, since the Great Pause has begun, I've been saying the Akashic feels like it's melting to me. It feels like the timelines are rearranging in such a way that the future is being rewritten, and so is the past, because we're starting to see the true colors of the different timelines and realities, and how so many of us actually live in different realities than each other. We experience different things, we accept different things, and to me that's like different hallways of the Akashic records. I'd love to know more about your perspective on the Akashic.
Yeah, I don't really know that much. I'd love to hear more about you, because I only had one Akashic reading, but I feel like I was channeling in as part of my spiritual growth to the records of my life as a download for me, maybe as I went through journaling. So I took part a couple of years ago in a program called Awakening the Guides, and it was about awakening the guides who are going to help people awaken, and I felt really called that was something I'm doing. So I think I tapped into like my soul essence and origins, and just as I was journaling and reading things, I would get these triggers of memories coming to me, and I journal them and get more information. So I think I almost intuitively just tap into it myself. But I had one Akashic reading. It was really awesome. It was just basically confirming what I already knew.
I think the Akashic is just, it's kind of like a trigger word, like you said, for intuitive connection and understanding on deeper levels. And it's kind of just like a psychic awareness of multiple timelines and like past lives and that soul connection.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like that. I like to compare things to movies and things that other people can kind of make sense of. So I'm making an assumption that you have seen all of the Harry Potters. Are you familiar with Harry Potter?
Yes.
Okay, you know where they go into like the prophecy hallway and they're like trying to get the prophecy, and oh man, I can't even think of the term, but I know like and there's like all these aisles of all these like thoughts and experiences that have happened, and they're fighting for it. That's kind of like a visual of like the Akashic records. Like all the records are like in these hallways, and they're a team of spiritual companions that are fighting for what they feel is right and trying to find the right path in the Akashic to take. And sometimes one of them will go back in time and it changes all of the different perspectives, and the records get changed too. So
okay.
It's kind of like,
how did you learn about the Akashic, or if this just evolved for you?
It's kind of a natural thing, but I guess I heard the trigger word at like a festival or some sort of workshop I was in, and it kind of just sort of started to make sense, and I kind of put it into that perspective. I was like, oh, it's like when they went in Harry Potter and the Phoenix, and yeah, I have a weird series of sparks that goes off when I start to
I think that's
tap into
common. Like that, I think everyone has different intuition of what they're meant to follow in their path, and like it's like I think I know what you're talking about. It's like all of a sudden a little switch goes off and you just have an aha moment of what you're meant to know and share with people.
Yeah, and that's part of why I wanted to use my voice to make different podcasts and things too, is to remind people that it's okay to have different perspectives too, and it's okay for it to grow, and that it's okay to just have those aha moments and start to really dive deeper into it, and to not be like, oh, this is crazy, why would I look into this? But instead to really like feel why your soul calls you to look more into the Akashic records, or to intuitive guidance, or your spirit guides, or angels is another thing that I've been really connected to. And I believe you're connected with the angels. I know you're connected with the fairies, and that's been something that I've been kind
Oh
of
yeah, the fairies is more new. The angels was really one of the ways years ago that I got into thinking, there was something more. And as a Catholic, angels are accepted to believe in. And my friend and I were really tuned in. She would hear her angels. I'm kind of someone who believes without seeing, but of course now I see through my third eye more, but I don't really physically see anything. I just believe it. And then I started doing angel cards, but I've always been tied to the angels. I started knowing my angel probably about the decade of when I started getting into the spiritual stuff. I asked my angel for her name. It's Penelope. And then I had another angel, Priscilla. It was like these two P's. One I see is pink and one was purple. That's like my two favorite colors. So I think the angels can connect with us in the way that would like relatable,
Yeah, they come to us in how we're willing to accept and acknowledge them, because
Right.
they've been trained with love by spirit to show up to those that give them permission, and to not overstep boundaries unless it's in the sake of like for the good of humanity. And even then they still kind of have to have permission.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that you were able to get your angels' names. Angels for me have been very interesting. They've been something that have evolved for me over time. I used to have my family would call them my imaginary friends, but now I realize that they've just always been my angels, and that they've been with me and they've been experiencing with me. And I've always connected with the energy of Michael, and I have a Raphael, and there were other like more common names that I would call them, but they had the same energy. And sometimes I would say it was fragments of them. And more recently, I like how you say that you don't have to see them to just know that they're there, because I say I see them like next to me, behind me, in front of them, behind me, like I'm in this shield of angel protection. And I never really thought of it because I didn't see them physically, but I see them almost telepathically. And I didn't even realize that I saw them telepathically until somebody's like, why do you always look to the left when you're speaking about this thing? And I realized that I was kind of like communicating with Archangel Michael to my left sometimes. And when I look to my right, I get downloads from what I feel is Archangel Raphael. And then I have
That's so funny. Yeah. Archangel Michael is with me pretty much all the time. He stands behind me, but my guardian angel's on my left shoulder. Like it's totally similar. Like my spirit guides are like around my body and certain spots. Like my healer guides have changed, but they're always on my right hip. And like my spirit, like more like typical teacher guides are on my like left front of me, like on my side. And Archangel Michael's always like with me when I'm healing or channeling people. So, and I call on other angels. Like I call on angels in the past to protect my house in the four corners. Like, and one time I had an experience where my daughter and I was driving my daughter in the back seat of my little Saturn. And we're at the stoplight, and I saw this truck coming really fast behind me, this semi, and I was just super calm. I just inched up, and I just knew nothing was going to happen. I had like no panic, and the truck stopped, skidded, and turned his cab just enough to not hit me or the other car. And then later in a meditation that week, I saw that there was a force field of angels protecting my daughter, and then angels coating my car to keep me calm.
That's amazing.
And I just knew that was truth,
You felt it, and you probably in that moment asked for help in some way, like you that
right
shield. And it's just so powerful. And I think that's when I started seeing and feeling my what they called imaginary friends. Was when I was really young. I felt very unseen, and I was going through a lot of traumatic things, and people are like, well, you had these experiences because you were traumatized. And it's like, but they're still with me, and they're still guiding me, and they're still protecting me, and there's something a little bigger here than just a child that was hurt.
Definitely. And I was feeling like the sensitivity, people who are more sensitive, more gifted, often have more angels around them, is what I got. When my daughter was young, I sensed she had more angels.
Very much
Um,
so.
so I feel like it's more protection needed for the ones who need more protection.
And the ones that are willing to communicate with them, like, why wouldn't, if
Yeah,
I'm willing to have a conversation with them, why wouldn't they want to hang out with me and like
exactly.
have a conversation? And then like behind me I have Metatron, because he's like my timekeeper, and he's like, okay, you got to get going. Sometimes he'll like push me forward in time, or he'll slow down time for me. And I like to say that Ariel's in front of me because she's like the confidence, and she like leads the way. And sometimes, I need protection. She'll switch spots with Michael, or maybe I need more like healing than like protection, and they'll swap spots. And like whoever's my right hand is typically like, your right hand man. And sometimes it's
Yeah,
Raphael, sometimes it's Michael, but like I just telepathically can feel them there. And it's like their
yeah.
message is just so deep in our hearts. And I know that
My meditation leader, when I told her the story of the angels helping me, I knew at that moment that was them, but I didn't see the vision till later that week. But she said Metatron was there, and I looked it up, and he's like a protector of children.
Mhm.
So it was very interesting. Just in that, I've heard that I'm so protected by angels now because I've called on them so much for protection that I don't even need to ask anymore.
Mm.
Do you feel that too?
I I don't have to ask because I've given them permission.
Yeah.
I've given them permission to just be there by welcoming them in with my like I have different altar spaces. I have I've been working on paintings. I have my card decks. Like I've welcomed them into my space and told them that I would really appreciate if they gave me messages of guidance for not only myself, but they can use me as a channel to help others. And that's why you've given that permission too.
Yeah.
Um, Now that brings up something that's interesting that I'd like to talk about. So you come from a Catholic background. I come from a different kind of Christian background, and something that a lot of my followers have wanted to ask me is like, where do altars fit into this? And I know that you have some beautiful altars and some beautiful crystals and spiritual tools. And
Yeah, I have a big altar I made.
what did that
So
mean
I'm
for
not a
you?
practicing Catholic now, but I never, like, for me, I was always open to whatever was coming in. And it just felt right. Whatever felt right in my soul, in my heart, I never doubted that it was okay to do. And so that's kind of how I feel about it is like you connect and grow with your spiritual self and you bring all the parts of you that you've grown with to them, no matter how you practice it, it's part of you always. Like I always feel like my religion was a gift to me and it made me who I am today. It connected me to angels, for instance, or and my mother became very devout in her older years. And so it's just this connection with us too. But the altar kind of evolved. I just started collecting crystals and then it turned to this altar. I took the top of a bookcase when I redecorated my house and I was putting yoga stuff on it. And I had purchased this little chakra kind of cloth, which I thought at the time when I bought it was going to be like bigger. I could put on the ground more and like it was going to be thicker, but it was more like a little drop cloth scarf kind of thing. So it was all the chakras and I started collecting. I love color. So I put the color coded crystals on each of the chakras and it's just grown and grown and grown to that. And now I do Reiki through it and just keep charging crystals there. So
I
that's
love
kind of how
that.
it's grown.
Yeah, and I think that that's important for you people to remember, that whatever feels like the best way for you to connect with spirit is part of that awakening process and unpacking
Yeah.
what that means for you. So
Exactly. It
I
evolves. It just grows each time, and you're like, how can more come? And more comes. If you're open to it, it just expands exponentially, it feels like. So just be open to it, is what my advice would be. Don't doubt it. Just allow and be open to the messages because they just keep growing and you'll get more guidance as you open up to it.
I love that. That kind of answers my question of what would you tell your younger self? Because I like to ask people that too. Like, what else would you tell your younger self? Some lessons that you've learned through your experience.
I think don't doubt and um, self-care is really big. Keeping consistent with the self-care, which I still am working on, but I think the more habits that you acquire, just learning to love yourself as you are in the moment, because that's the hardest thing to learn, I think.
It is really hard because people are like, how do I love myself? And it's like, if you don't know how to love yourself, it's probably that you've never been truly loved. And you got to really kind of unpack that too. Like, what's your definition of love? And if you can give that to other people, why wouldn't you give it to yourself first? It's like
I think
unconditional.
acceptance is the key to love, because if you accept the parts of all parts of you, and it doesn't have to be perfect, like that's what I struggled with. Um, it's perfect in its own way. So I think acceptance is the key to love. I really do, because
I
that's
think
when it started helping me.
that's beautiful, because I ask clients that too when they start struggling with their self-perception or their weight or their financials and things like that too. I like to ask people like, well, do you accept others? Do you judge others by their weight or their financials or whatever it is you're judging yourself by? Do you judge other people by that? And then they kind of stop and think, because sometimes maybe they do, and then they start asking themselves why, and it kind of changes perspective that way in acceptance. But a lot of times they're like, no, I don't see anything differently. I just try to love people all the same. And it's like, well, then why wouldn't you love yourself the same, silly?
Yeah, we're always hard on ourselves, and I don't know where that really comes from. I think it's part of our growth because it challenges us. So I think it's an evolution. Like, don't be hard on yourself that you don't love yourself. It's kind of like this, you know, vicious circle. It's like it's part of our growth to learn to love ourselves. Like, it's not an instant thing. People, and then you think you love yourself, and then it comes to another level, and you're like, oh, I didn't really love all parts of me, and now I'm learning to. So it's like this awareness that kind of evolves. For
Mm,
me, that's how it was. Like, and I was doing affirmations, and I learned to love my body more. And that's
mm,
a constant work, though. I think that
yeah.
one for most women.
Yeah. And when I think about things like that too, it kind of reminds me of like, sometimes I didn't love myself because I wasn't being a version of myself I was proud of, or I wasn't feeling like I was taking enough um maybe action or something in my own, like, not appearance, experience, like how I was showing up, I guess is the best thing I'm trying to say, is like,
Oh, like how to, like your growth of your own, like
right,
potential, maybe.
yeah, like I wasn't doing anything and taking action to in my potential to feel that deeper love. I was kind of being stagnant, and that was just from my personal experience. So
Yeah, yeah. That growth thing, though. Um, this is another piece of advice I've learned personally: is there are periods where it feels like you're stagnant or not doing anything, and it's actually part of the spiritual process.
mm,
Um, I've learned, because it's kind of like, in the winter things hibernate and then they bloom in the spring. There's kind of these periods like that in your life. It's not always on, is how I've perceived it.
right, and you might be like uprooted and you have to kind of get grounded, get your roots back in so that you can
Yeah.
grow to be a luscious flower. Yeah, I love that too.
As long
um
as you're like aware and still open, I think it's all okay. And it's just like you kind of go with the ebb and flow of it. And it's different for everybody. For me, it's been periods where I might not even read cards at all. I might not do any crystals. I might not do anything that's technically spiritual, but I'm still growing. And then the next time I do those things, it's like expanded. So it's really interesting. That's what I've observed for myself.
oh, definitely. It's like a graphic. I actually had just shared this in one of my sister circles before I hopped in here, and it was, I wish I knew who the quote was, but it says, know your sources of rejuvenation, the people who light up your spirit, the activities that fire up your creativity, and the actual amount of solitude that you need to feel fresh again. And moving towards your goals is not linear, but sometimes you need a good break before you actually make a big leap forward.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I like that.
Yeah, and I felt like that. It felt guided to share. So okay, we talked about a little bit of what you would tell your younger self. Let's talk about some other spiritual tools you have. You mentioned crystals, and I would love to know some of your favorite crystals, because I am definitely a crystal person,
Yes,
as
I
well as
know.
some of your other tools. Like, what are some of your favorite things to play with?
I definitely, the crystals has grown into like this huge hobby and huge collection. Luckily, I have the finances to indulge it, and I share it though. Like, so the more I buy, the more I give to people. And the crystals has just come into this connection and communication with them. So I started wearing bracelets, I think is when I first started getting into like the stones and crystals. I found these bracelets called Soul Journey jewelry, and I started wearing those. And then I have my good friend Kelsey makes bracelets. Of course, your jewelry I purchased. So it's just kind of evolved into, and then I started purchasing crystals. Um, it was just intuitively guided to get crystals for other people, for myself. Amethyst is my favorite, and I feel really strongly my soul essence is connected to amethyst.
What
The
does that
violet
like, what does
flame
that
for
mean
me.
for you? Okay, I was gonna say
So the violet flame, I found out that I'm a keeper of the violet flame when I was getting all this information about my soul birth and origin. So the violet flame is a sacred ray of transformation from everything into light and love. So I just have the gift to spread that intuitively and share that with people. And so amethyst, I found out, was the source of the violet flame. It has it intuitively inside of it.
I love that. Amethyst is one of my favorites too. I heard an old wise tale, and I don't know how true it is, but it worked for me and it was unintentional. But someone once told me that if you give a piece of amethyst to somebody that you were once in love with in like a past life, that they would never leave your side if it was meant to be. And I didn't hear that tale until after the first weekend I had met Silo. I gifted him like an amethyst bead for like a bracelet I was teaching him how to make. And he still has that little tiny piece of amethyst somewhere. And we think about that wise tale quite often, about how that violet flame like leads people you love together. It doesn't have to be romantically either. It can be a friendship. It can be a connection. So amethyst is like a super connecting kind of intuitive crystal.
Yeah, it's very intuitive. It's interesting you're talking about the relationship, because I never liked diamonds, and I always loved amethyst. And so my husband, I pretty much told him this when we were dating and before we got engaged. So I had an amethyst engagement ring.
Oh my goodness, that's so wild. I felt so
Yeah.
guided to share that story with you. And that just, oh my gosh.
So we've been married. It'll be 15 years this year.
I love that.
We were
That just,
together since like the 90s, dating for the most of that. But
oh my
yeah.
goodness, that just made my heart so happy. Like I always am like, wonder if that works for anybody else. Did it just work for me?
So yeah, and I definitely feel that that's a very strong intuitive stone. So that's my favorite stone. Yeah, rose quartz too. There's just so many. It's hard.
Do you have one for protection? Do you have a favorite for protection?
That's a good question.
I feel like that's something a lot of people are wanting and needing now, is to feel grounded, safe, and protected. I know what ones I use, but I'd like to just know if there's
I
one you
think
found.
amethyst is everything for me.
Like that makes sense. My shout out recommendation, because I had that question asked in one of my emails, is Tiger's Eye and Obsidian. I like to use those two. Tiger's Eye has been a protective talisman for warriors from what I understand, centuries, or since they started collecting stones. And another wise tale was to put one above your doorway so that you are protected by any who enter, and to also use obsidian as kind of like your shield. It's said to soak out negativity. So I have like an obsidian ball that I'll roll in my hands quite frequently. So those are just two of mine that I like to shout out when people.
I don't really. I'll tell you this. I don't feel like a need to protect myself. Maybe as part of it, amethyst is like a soul connection for me. So, and also I feel like the angel protection is my strongest gift. And I asked one time, or maybe I can't remember if I was told, or maybe about 6 to 8 months ago, I think is when it came in, and I heard that I'm what was it? Pretty much untouchable. Like I have so much protection around me, spiritually, energetically, light, angels, that I don't even like. There's nothing can get through.
You're very protected, and your light and aura are very showing of that, and it just shows that you're there for love. Because I think you don't feel a need for protection, because if somebody came at you, you would find a way to hold space or know that
I
is
think
a
that
part
could
of your
be
experience.
it. So I don't doubt that protection is a need for a lot of people, but now I would call on angels in the past for protection so much that I think there's this force field of angels around me now.
I love that. Beautiful. So, okay, so we talked a little bit about tools and crystals. Is there any do you have any like oils or herbs or anything that you want to shout out, or are those things that you work with at all?
Oh yes, I work with. It's kind of evolved, these tools you pick up, and so oils. I've made my own blends, and I've actually gifted them to people. So I have this cold remedy that I use, and I gave it to a guy who was a non-believer, and he had the cold, and within a couple days, he's like, "Oh, I feel kind of better." And he was like, total skeptic, and he didn't want to admit it, but it totally worked for him. So I do whatever carry oil, like I think usually olive oil or sesame seed oil, and I'll put eucalyptus, um, peppermints, I think spearmint I did, lemon, lavender, a little bit of everything. It just depends what I feel that day. Cinnamon I think I even put in. But like definitely the eucalyptus, the peppermint, and like a little bit of wintergreen, even a couple drops of that is really strong. I think I put it in for him. So then you just rub it on your feet, put socks on, rub it on your chest, under your nose, and like it's like amazing. It cuts your cold in half.
That's awesome. Yeah, I always
So that's my
like
biggest remedy. And I've made a bug spray too with
that's
that.
another useful one. Do you want to shout that one out? What's the bug spray one?
Yeah, I kind of use those same oils. I think I used similar I think I used lemon and lavender. Tea tree I think was in there. So another blend, and I just used it. You put the like filtered or
I heard lemongrass is pretty good for like.
Oh yeah, lemongrass. I think I did put that in there. Lemon, and I love lemongrass. So I would put it in a little spritzer with some purified or filtered water, and then a little bit of witch hazel, I think is what I put in there. I found a recipe online, and then I kind of made my own. But and it lasts a long time, so I just spray it, and I go out gardening, and it seemed to work.
That's awesome. Yeah, I always like to hold space for different remedies and perspectives and get that out there for people, because when I first started I was like, I want to know more about oils, I want to know more about crystals, and I wanted to know a little bit about everything but know where to start. So I love this.
Google is my friend. Like there's so much, you would be surprised. I Google so much, and I just kind of find the things and then make it my own. But yeah, the oils, all that stuff, I believe in all the natural healing, definitely.
That's awesome. So what are maybe some other resources? I'm a reader. I love listening to podcasts, watching videos. What are some resources that maybe helped you on in your early awakening, or that you would recommend and be like, man, I wish I would have read this when I like was first waking up?
Yeah, I think go to like, for me, workshops were a big thing to introduce me to different concepts. So the yoga studio, find a good like yoga studio that has good workshops, or any kind of center for healing. Like my meditation leader did this Center for the Healing Arts, which had massage and different healing arts there. So find like something that you tune into, that you could learn from people who have a knowledge. That's what helped me the most, I'd say, is like tapping into other people's knowledge. And then I would go research myself. Cards, actually, there was a card deck, a dragon deck, and I started reading it, and she was tuned into Atlantis, which I found out I'm tied to. And I just started reading the book that came with the cards, and it was like all these synapses and all these intuitions kind of came into my brain, like, oh my gosh, I'm tied to that, I'm tied to this. So just reading something you're drawn to, like off the bookshelf at the store or something, it's usually tied to your soul purpose.
I agree. I know I have some connections to Atlantis, but I haven't like unpacked all that yet. I'm still waiting on that full download. But for me, it was kind of connecting with like stars and galactic type energy and the angels too. So it was like all those things that I felt kind of really nerdy and weird, being like, this seems so important to me to understand, and none of my friends got it. But I was like, I'm just going to keep reading. I'm just going to keep listening. I'm going to keep learning, keep showing up. It's like all we can
Whatever
do.
You feel like a hit in your heart, I think is maybe the best way to describe it. It's like you just get this almost chills, or just this like excitement and this like flurry in your heart and your body. That's when you know you're meant to tune into it.
I love it. Do you feel any other messages or anything specifically being channeled through you right now that you want to share?
I feel like just acceptance that seemed to come in, accepting who you are in the moment and embracing change. My mantra that came in last year is allow, don't force. So like anything that feels like you're working too hard at it is probably not meant for you, maybe even just at this moment. It could be for the future. So if it feels like easy and like it's almost like breathing, then you know you're in tune with your spirit.
I love that. sometimes I forget that even as a meditation, like, leader, coach, whatever you want to call me, like, sometimes even I forget to breathe and how important
Oh
that
yeah,
is.
me too. Yeah. But if it's as natural as breathing, then you know you're in the flow. And you might not always be in the flow. That's the thing. Don't judge. I feel like don't judge if you're in the flow or not, or that you're supposed to be in this certain place and compare yourself to other people who are doing something you feel is like amazing, because you're amazing in your own way and you might not be in that exact moment, you know, that advanced maybe in your own spiritual growth, but just give it time, because it just grows the more you give it time and open to it. So that's why I keep feeling like who's ever listening to this, um, almost like don't doubt yourself. Be accepting and know that your purpose is unique. Um,
I love
and it's
that.
beautiful. It's a beautiful thing to accept your own self and your spiritual growth.
It is, and that's kind of what the awakening is there's that acceptance of it, and moving in through it, and accepting it. I feel like I
And
just
I
have to go.
feel like coming out of the spiritual closet was something big for me, where I actually will express it to people at work now. And it's funny when I look back at how scared I was of that. That's another thing I give advice to, is like, come out of the spiritual closet, like be your kooky self, like you were, I forget the term you used, but like do the weird things, because people like accept it. You would be surprised how many people accept it, because you'll be in line with those people you're meeting.
And you inspire others to do the same. Maybe they're too afraid to be the ones to come out, so just be the best you that you can be, loving the things that you do, and not be afraid of being you. Like you said, accept it, because
Yeah,
you're being that light is the light for others, and giving them the permission slip to be like, yeah, I like angels too, I just didn't know that I was allowed to talk about it. Or yeah, I collect stones and they have a deeper
right,
meaning to me. Like, I've been talking to stones since I was a kid. Like, you don't just say that to
right.
everybody,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like I'm from a purple planet. Like that's one of my things I intuited. Like, and I'll tell people and they'll accept it because it's just part of who I am, and they're okay with it. And it's like, really? And it's funny. So it's just kind of funny, like to
I'm
describe
finding
my soul origin as that.
I'm finding more and more people relate to the idea of being an alien than we would like to even believe, because it's like everyone's like, oh yeah, I'm an alien, and they say it jokingly, but then they really deep down feel that connection that they don't necessarily know where they belong. And that's becoming more and more revealed on how much we all feel like we're looking for this home. Where is home?
Yeah, and it might not be you're an alien in this physical
Right.
lifetime, but our soul the souls mostly, especially of people who are awakening and meant to guide others in this on this planet, have been here a long time. Their origin is other than earthly, for sure.
Definitely. There's so much more than what we were ever taught, and we just
Yeah.
keep accepting it. It's
Keep
important to
accepting it, exactly. No
that
matter
seems
how
to be the
kooky it
theme.
feels, accept what you get as your guidance.
I love it. Acceptance. Well, I feel like I'm being guided by spirit to ask if you feel if you'd feel comfortable, either if your card's around, giving us a quick collective reading, or lead us in like a little ending meditation of acceptance, something of those lines.
Yeah, let me. I think I'm feeling cards, which will then always lead to a channeling for me.
I love
So,
it.
I feel like I want to give you an option between a couple decks. So,
Okay.
one of them that's coming is called the Enchanted Tarot. I have
Ooh.
Glastonbury Tarot, um, Angels and Ancestors, Angel Prayers, or Guidance and Guidance.
Mm.
Ooh, Akashic Tarot I have.
Why don't you pull? Would it be weird to just pull one from each deck?
No, but which I feel like it shouldn't be all.
Enchanted.
Definitely, I'm feeling that one.
That was the one I was like, if she has to pick one, go with Enchanted.
Yeah.
The Akashic one called to me, and then the did you say one about like Ascended Masters?
Yeah, I was feeling that one too. The Angels
Just
and Ancestors.
yeah, like maybe one. I think that's 3 decks. I don't know how many I called out
Yeah,
now.
that's three. Yeah.
Yeah, like
And
one
the
from each.
Enchanted Tarot I've only started using recently. But I felt the Akashic one because you are tied to that so strongly.
Yeah, I just felt
So
like
I'm
you.
going to start with Enchanted. It's funny. I like shuffling. It's funny. Like Jill, the owner of the Updog, she calls it like I'm a blackjack dealer, but this Enchanted Tarot is so big, I can't even shuffle it the normal way. It's like, oh God, how many inches? It's probably like 6 inches long and then like 3 inches wide. So I have to do the like weird shuffle on that one.
One of those
But
big
I
data
just used
sticks.
it recently for financial advice, and it was really dead on.
Oh,
It
I
was
love it.
funny. I was using angel numbers for my finances too. I'm so into the angel numbers.
I actually really like angel numbers too, and people ask me quite frequently, like, why do you have like so many repetitive numbers in your prices for your jewelry work? And I was like, because I try not to overprice, I try not to undercut, and I just let angels guide me, and like it's
Yeah,
easier that way.
I love that you do that. Like the 1111 or the 333s and 444s are some of my numbers.
Yeah, and I used to try to keep track, and there used to be all these formulas they taught me in business school, and I was like, I just want the angels to guide me. Like they know what's best in my financial future.
Okay. Oh, interesting. I think I got that one before. Okay. Some of these came up before for me. Interesting. So I pulled 3. I tend to say I'm going to do 1 and then I pull 3. So we'll see. I did 3 from the Enchanted Tarot. So I got Prince of Wands, Queen of Wands, and 2 of Hearts. I feel like this is you. This is for you specifically.
Okay, go for it.
Prince is CeeLo, and then you're the Queen. And the 2 of Hearts is, you guys forever love, I feel like. There's like swans on the front of it too. And these
Adorable.
2 hearts, the one heart has a star, a moon, and another star. And then the other heart has like a design with a heart embedded in like 2 little swirls. And then there's like little Cupid looking angels on the top of it.
That's adorable. I love it.
So yeah, and this one has a lot of information. I'll read the little quick thing on it. Let me look real quick. I'm feeling to read some of it for you. I like to give from the books because I feel like they're channeled from whoever wrote them. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a quick one. It says, you need to feel inspired. This is for you, the Queen of Wands. Be a charismatic, self-assured person who knows how things must be done. Behave like royalty. Parties and other gatherings will benefit you. Find a creative project that fully occupies you. Inspire others. That's so good for you. I love
I,
it.
I love it too, because I just was telling Sila, I was like, I need to stay on my mission. I need to stay focused. And he's like, and I was talking about how we used to go to many different events. And then as the Great Pause happened, obviously everybody could not go on events anymore.
Right.
And I was talking to him about how sometimes I really miss it. And then sometimes I don't. And how much more togetherness it's felt being able to connect with people through time and space and like the virtual world. And it's like remembering that like that's still connecting, and networking is still
Yeah, that's
so
what I'm
key.
getting. This podcast is one way, like you're inspiring and connecting. So I think it can be whatever way you feel you're connecting. Here, the Prince is for him. So let's see. For CeeLo, you need to move from where you are now to where you know you should be to increase your effectiveness in the world. There's nothing wrong with ambition. Be a pioneer. Take calculated risks. Do not brag. Just do it.
I love it. He's very humble about it, and that's a very good message for him. I will make sure he gets the message.
Okay. And then the 2 of Hearts, I think we know, but I'll look at what exactly that says for you guys. The 2 of Hearts is romance, and it says you need the clear, nurturing, supportive, and heartfelt exchange of emotions. It is the gift of a romantic relationship. Through a good familial or business relationship may do instead. Though, learn what romance truly means. I feel that's your like collaboration you guys do with your business and
I think
friendship.
it's a good message for the collective too,
Mhm.
and a reminder of another reason I made this podcast is because I have a lot of powerful women that are coming out of really hard relationships, really hard commitments to other family, friends, and definitely partners. And part of my motivation for this was to be able to give them an outlet in remembering that there are partners out there and people out there, family members out there, community out there that is going to cheer you on. So whether it's a Prince Charming or
Yeah.
a friend or whatever, like it's a message to me because I'm here holding space to receive it. But I want everyone listening to know that it's like the reminder that you don't have to go at life alone, and there's people out there to cheer you on.
I love it. So I'm going to pull Akashic and we'll see how many come up. And then I'll see what the angels, I think I'm going to do a little bit of both, but I feel like these are going to be more collective.
I love it. Yeah, I didn't mean to hijack your description there. I just felt like it was more than just me.
Whatever you're channeling is perfect.
Yeah, it was like...
That's part of the collaboration that we're having now.
Sometimes we think messages are about each other, and they're like so much bigger than that.
They could be bigger. All right, so this one... Oh, 5 of Scrolls, diversity. There we go.
It's a good one.
And the King of Forces. So the diversity one, there's a woman standing on a balcony, a beautiful landscape, and she has scrolls. And then the King of Forces looks like like not a hunter, like more of a shepherd looking, like outdoorsman, with like a smock, kind of one of those long like smocks, and then he's got a wolf and what's it called? A buck next to him. And there's like a stormy, like purple sky. It's pretty cool again. So I'm going to pull that and those, and then I'm going to pull an angel one, and then I'll figure out what that all means.
What the full message is there. That makes sense.
Yeah, I feel like they're collaborating here. I feel like it's like the King of Forces is kind of like what's going on right now. It's the transformation and the connection to Mother Earth that's expanding right now. That's what that one feels like.
Yeah, and just the acceptance again. The acceptance is like the term that just keeps coming up. Diversity, the acceptance of...
Yeah, the diversity is important. What are you feeling on that? I feel like that's for you to expand on.
I have always been a believer that earth beings, not just humans, and we all deserve to have a bigger experience than what each other witnesses, and just like the acceptance of that. And there's been a lot of judgment just passed around to all different kinds of communities, whether it is because of color, religion, belief, or even just human versus animal. And it's just, there's so much more to it. And I think that diversity in your experience is so key. Just however you can allow more space for growth and acceptance of all living things and perspectives.
So it came up the Peacekeeper, and it's a young Native American woman with braids, and she's got the white buffalo behind her, and she's got like a staff, and it says, "Let go of the need to be right." So I think that ties in with your message of just acceptance.
Yes.
That so many people have opinions right now, and they feel like theirs are so valid and no one else's are valid. And that's what people are releasing, I think. And they need to release that.
And like the understanding that sometimes even when we mean well, we still have learning to do. That's part of it too. I think like the peacekeeper thinks they mean well, and usually they do, but they also realize that there's like many sides, many stories that have to kind of come together.
Yeah, I'm looking to see if anything from the message I want to read.
Beautiful. No, I think that's great.
I think that's good. I think we're good. Feels right. I feel like just us tuning into what, like, I love that you call it the Great Pause, what the Great Pause is bringing us. It's been a roller coaster for me, and it's just allowing me to be who I am in the moment. Even if it's not this beautiful spiritual side, I've grown to different levels as I go, and different acceptance of each moment. It's been a struggle to be such an extrovert and be stuck inside, without people.
I get it. I get it. And yeah,
But
it
it's
has
been
been
good
a
for my
pause.
growth. It's been good to figure out that how to do spiritual even though I'm stuck in.
Yeah. And that's
So
why
this is one good way to connect with you.
no, I love it. And that's why I've been calling it the great pause too. Someone triggered that term within me and it felt so right. And as we shift more into this recreation of what people are calling the new normal, we're going to be calling it the great reset. I think it's like it's going from the great pause to the great reset because we're resetting humanity and reality and accepting the world that we know we deserve to live in.
Yeah, and for me, like right at first, I was like super accepting because I just knew this was part of the new earth, the new awakening. I like intuitively knew because I've been on that path of being someone who guides people to do that. And I know that it's coming, but I was like eager for it to come, and my patience was getting tested, you know? I just think it's going to be like instant, but it's not going to be that way, is what I'm realizing. It does need a reset. It does need but I think whatever we intend or like focus on, we create. And that's why you're calling it the great pause and the great reset is part of you creating that.
This is true. I love that too. Wow. Thank you. This has been a beautiful conversation and I am just so grateful to have just powerful women that get it out there and to know that I'm not alone in this journey. So I'm just
Oh, great.
Is there any way do you want people to be able to reach out to you or is there any other communities you want to shout out or anything you want to share before we hop off for the day?
Yeah, one of these days I will get a website because I'm a full-time software engineer, so I don't really do my business full time. But they could email me or that might be or
Yeah.
Facebook.
How do we
Marjorie
find you?
Lacovic on Facebook. So it's Lacovic is my last name, and Marjorie's Marjorie. So you can find me on Facebook, friend me, say where just say who you know, and then also my email is marj aug @yahoo.com.
All right. I'll put those in the show notes so people can find you and reach out to you. And again, I'm just so grateful that you were able to be here. I'm grateful to the listeners, those out there waking up and shining on with us and trying to be the best version of them they could be. You guys are great. Remember, you can find more awesome content that can hopefully light up your life at bringmetolife.com with the number 2, or you can find me at shantasticshine.com. Is there anything else at all you feel channeled to share, my friend?
Just peace and blessings to everyone.
Beautiful way to end it. Stay awake, shine on always, everybody. Until next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for shining on with us.